right. You're listening to America's Voice Now. In this last segment of our show today, we're going to talk about the president's recent statement. He held a press conference in reference to the upcoming debt fight. And he actually made an amazing statement. These are his words. They are not mine. I'm laughing at them, but they're his words. Raising the debt ceiling does not increase our debt. You have got to be kidding me. Raising the debt ceiling does not increase the debt? How may I ask, Mr. President, is that possible? I realize that you are practiced in verbicide and redefining what is, along with a few of your earlier cohorts. But I've got to ask you how you would expect us, the American people, to so blindly accept so stupid a statement. Here's what he actually had to say. This is it in total. He dismisses his concerns about raising the debt ceiling. First of all, by claiming and noting that it's been done many times in the past, as if that makes it okay. I mean, you remember that phrase your mother used to tell you when you would fight with your brother? 2 wrongs don't make a right. Well, Mr. President, I don't know what kind of a mother you had, but I think the vast majority of us remember that adage from somewhere in our youth. 2 wrongs do not make a right. You can't make us believe that 2 plus 2 doesn't actually equal 4. You cannot make us believe that 2 plus 2 somehow or other magically equals 2.1. We don't believe it. The laws of physics apply to you just like they apply to us. And you, irrespective of how many times you'd like to argue that point, cannot do so. You have zero credibility. You had zero credibility before this statement, but after this statement, we're laughing at you. Apparently your teleprompter was broken for this moment, because here's what he actually had to say. Every time he gets off the teleprompter, red lines come out and inane nonsense, fundamental change. Quote, now this debt ceiling, I just want to remind people in case you haven't been keeping up. Raising the debt ceiling, which has been done over 100 times, does not increase our debt. It does not somehow promote profligacy. All it does is it says you got to pay the bills that you've already racked up, Congress. It's a basic function of making sure that the full faith and credit of the United States is preserved. End quote. Okay. I advocate and promote that we use our critical thinking skills to read between the lines and to fully understand everything that we see and hear and read. And I say that for a reason. Because, first of all, this is like, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of a boy of maybe 8 or 10 who has been getting money from mommy and daddy because they're wealthy and they give him anything he wants. And he asks for a bike and he gets the best bike. And he asks for a TV in his room and he gets the best TV. And he asks for video game systems and they buy him 3. And he asks for toy after toy after toy after toy, and he gets them all. And Dad loses his job, and the money flow ceases. And the boy turns around and he says, I want some money. I want a cell phone. And they say, I'm sorry, son, but we've had to cut back on everything. Our budget is to the bone so that we can pay our basic bills. And he says, I don't really care. I want a cell phone. And the parents try to explain to him in calm and even-handed tones, son, we just don't have the money. We have just enough. In fact, we're going into debt every day. Our mortgage cost us more, along with our car payments and our insurance bill and our food bill, than we actually bring in. And right now we're operating at a deficit, son. Do you understand the principle of money? And the petulant child turns around and says, I don't care. I want that cell phone, and I don't care if you have to go borrow the money. You get me a phone. That little boy's name is Barack Obama. First of all, his condescending and abusive use of the phrase, I just want to remind people in case you haven't been keeping up. Well, first of all, Mr. President, let's understand something. It's your ownership of the media, and you at your direction that the media kowtows to you and kisses your feet so that they get the coverage that they want, while they blatantly expose their bias to promote your nonsense. And we would try to keep up if we could only just get true information. But you've passed the law to allow propaganda to be used against us for the first time in 60 some odd years. So we're not fooled because we try to keep up, but we're having a hard time deciphering truth from fiction sponsored by our own government. And the truth of the matter is, guys like me and my listeners, we actually keep up better than you do because we don't have time to frolic on a golf course or in the beach over in some island up in the Northeast while everyone is barred from the road so that we can ride a bike. We are actually keeping up. We're just trying to keep up with the bills. While we keep up with the news, we shift and sift off the wheat from the chaff, and we know the truth. So don't insult us further, Mr. President. You just want to remind people, in case you haven't been keeping up, raising the debt ceiling, which has been done over 100 times, does not increase our debt. Well, first of all, because 100 traitors before you committed treason doesn't mean that this treason is okay. It doesn't mean that we're going to put our children even further in the hole based on your whining tantrum. And it does increase the debt. The calculator doesn't lie. Unlike you, your entire administration, and every corrupted other agency and division of the 3 divisions of government that is currently seeking to master over us. It does not somehow promote profligacy. You've got to be kidding me. Mr. President, this government spends money at a rate that shames drunken sailors. I won't even insult them by comparing you two. You spend money on things that the average household would have long ago cut back on. But we don't own a printing press. We don't have unlimited credit paid for by someone other than ourselves. The OPM days, Mr. President, have got to stop. Your Obamacare debacle promises to be the extra lead in the back of the boat that will finally sink this dinghy beneath the waves. Oh, I know you've worked very hard to punch holes in the boat when no one's looking. I know you've bailed water in instead of out. I know that at night you've taken down the sails while everyone was asleep. I know that your hand has been in the food bin eating up what little bit there is for us to all share. I know that you are secretly hiding the only life vest on the boat for yourself. A free deck chair, Mr. President, on the Titanic is still on the Titanic. So don't be so condescending. You're not talking to a group of third graders here. We understand money and finance, quite frankly, better than you do. And I can tell you something else I know and understand, and so do all of our listeners, much better than you. It's this thing called the Constitution, which you claim to be a professor of, which is an absolute lie. You are an assistant teacher. But we understand the true meaning of the Constitution, not some warped, twisted, fantastical notion of it that you have. Raising the debt ceiling, which has been done over 100 times. So, if a mass murderer has committed murder 100 times, it's okay for him to continue? Is that what you're trying to tell us, Mr. President? It doesn't promote profligacy. You guys spend money we don't already have. How can it not? You're borrowing money to spend. So if we let you borrow more money, you will spend that too. That, sir, is the definition. Unbelievable. All it does say is it says you got to pay the bills that you've already racked up, Congress. Really, Mr. President? First of all, your grammar is awful. All it does say is it's got to pay the bills that you've already racked up, Congress. No, all it does say is that you are attempting to pull the wool over the eyes of the sheep one more time so that you can let the wolves loose in the pen. It's a basic function of making sure that the full faith and credit of the United States is preserved. No, sir, that is the exact opposite. The full faith and credit of the United States of America will be preserved when you stop abusing our credit-making privileges overseas. In fact, your point is completely opposite the whole discussion. He went on to suggest that the average person mistakenly thinks that raising the debt ceiling means the U.S. is racking up more debt. The average person? Who in the hell do you think you are? To talk to us that way. Quote, it's always a tough vote because the average person thinks raising the debt ceiling must mean that we're running up our debt. So people don't like to vote on it, and typically there's some gamesmanship in terms of making the president's party shoulder the burden of taking the vote. You had it right the first time. You slipped your tongue, Mr. Freudian slip. raising the debt pool, not taking the vote. First of all, it's not a tough vote. You've been corrupting, compromising, coercing, and twisting the arms of the Senate and the House, who have, for all intents and purposes, become so compromised by your little pet NSA pit bull that they know that if they even so much as speak up, you'll let out their secrets all over the world. Wish somebody would let out yours. Like that birth certificate you had made. Yeah, that one. It's always a tough vote because the average person thinks raising the debt ceiling must mean that we're running up our debt. Well, let me explain something to you, sir. I'm not an economics major. But I can tell you this. I got a calculator, and I understand that when I borrow, I got to pay it back with interest. That, sir, is running up the debt. You can attempt to sit there and give us some kind of a circular rationalization for it, but we don't believe you because you are a liar. You have proven yourself to be a liar over and over and over. That's right. Oh, that comment about 90% of Americans support common sense gun control. Yeah, that one. Yeah, 90% of Americans can't agree to even have breakfast, much less have to what to have for breakfast. So, Mr. President, we don't believe you because we know that you are a pathological liar. You lie so frequently, you don't even know when you're lying. You have begun to fall prey to your own Kool-Aid, sir. The fact that 100 previous traitors before you have willingly raised the debt does not make it acceptable. Did I say the word traitor? Hell yes. And that's the word I meant. You swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, to preserve and execute the laws of the United States of America, to honor and protect and defend it against all enemies, domestic and foreign. Running up our debt, selling our progeny and the fruits of their labor for literally centuries to come to our sworn enemy in China? That would constitute aiding and abetting the enemy. So, by the way, did your little decision the other day to change the law so that you can arm your Muslim Brotherhood pals over in Syria. That would be classified as aiding and abetting, sir. The Treasury has kept the debt since May. $25 million under the legal limit. So we're not fooled by your little profligacy statement, because we already know that Congress has already overspent since May. And your little dog Jack Lew, yeah, the guy who runs Treasury, which, interestingly, like all other previous individuals in his seat, all seem to come from your pals over at Wall Street, that 1% you whine so heavily about. Anyway, you've kept the debt $25 million under the legal limit since May. Today is September 19th. So how have you magically waved the wand of the great and powerful Oz and kept the debt $25 million under the limit? Oh, I heard Jack Lew's excuse. He says, we're just not funding the retirement programs for all the federal workers. Oh, so you're stealing the money that you've been entrusted with. It was given to you in escrow, and you're stealing that to pay your own bills. I get it. If I did that with if I did that with a client's money, under an escrow, I would go to jail for that. And you steal it with impunity because you know all you're going to do is add that to the top of the debt. See, we're not fooled for a moment. We realize that you run books that aren't at all like what everybody else in the world has to run under the generally accepted accounting principles that the world must adhere to in order to remain legal and credible. Credible with their investors, credible with their owners, credible with their accountants and the IRS and everybody else. We recognize that you run a completely different set of books. We realize that you lie and steal routinely from us. But when you actually come down to the point where you begin to condescend to us, as if we should just acknowledge your greatness while you're stealing, as if we should be thankful that you are stealing, as if we should be grateful that you are destroying our country from within to accomplish your fundamental change. These average persons here, we get it. And we see right through you, your charade. We see right through that mask of the charlatan that you wear. I know you for the evil that you are. I can smell you. And you have the stench of death and corruption. It emanates off of you. We average persons, we get it. We understand, we know. We're not fooled. You may get a couple of low informations out there who you've bribed with phones and free food and free crap. But the rest of us, we all pretty much get it. We get it that the press is too sycophantic to actually challenge you. And we get it that you will only benefit those in the press who do your bidding. We get it that some of them have drank the Kool-Aid with you and are willing to help. But we know who you are. And we know what you're about. We know what your Obamacare program is all about. You don't give a rat's butt whether or not any of us die of anything. All you're really interested in is how do you consolidate power. And one way to consolidate power is to create databases and build dossiers on every American citizen so that you know everything about us, from the color of the socks we wear to the color of the stripes on them, to whether we prefer boxers or briefs, to who we spend our time with and talk with and where we work and what kind of money we make and what kind of property do we own and how do we buy and sell and trade. Who are our friends? Because you, sir, operate under the Marxist philosophy that at some point in time, all of that information will be extraordinarily useful when the time comes when the pressure has to be applied. No, sir, we are not fooled for a moment. Raising the debt ceiling actually does increase the debt. It's an empirical, mathematical fact. And nothing you can say or do will change that in our minds. Have a nice day, Mr. President. Folks, you've been listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.com. AVN.org. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And you can find this and every other program that we do on youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Please catch that video. If you like it, you like the previous one, if you like any of the other shows that we do, share them with a friend. Have a great day.